For my first video, I really didn't know what I wanted to showcase. I admit I was a little camera shy in doing this, but I knew I really wanted to make a YouTube channel so I could post my hobbies, my projects, and content, and just share my goofy creative side. Before I get too far into this, just a quick hobbyist's disclaimer. I am not a professional. Not everything I do for hobbying is the safest or uh, best practice. This is just my hobby, and sometimes a craftsman's gotta do what a craftsman's gotta do. Regardless, whatever you see me do in this video, just be responsible, take precautions in all things that you do, have some common sense. That being said, welcome to my channel. This is Mudhead Hobbies, Minis, and Games. I hope this video inspires you to go and create a project of your own, whether it's building your first Gunpla, painting a wargame army or squad, whatever it is. In this video, I'm going to show you what I did for my Gunpla Builders World Cup 13 entry. I hope you enjoyed the footage I was able to put together for this video. Participating in this competition was amazing. This is my first time participating in this competition. I learned so much about techniques and hobbying, Gunpla building, diorama crafting, painting, wire rigging, video editing. I could go on. We love to see it. There were many surprises I discovered along the way for this project, and there were some challenges I had to overcome to get this project done in time. For those of you who do not know what the Gunpla Builders World Cup is, it's a painting competition held worldwide by the Japanese company Bandai Namco. Bandai Namco makes these plastic kits for Gundam that has come to be known as Gunpla. These Gunpla kits can be incredibly affordable or extravagantly expensive. They have a few categories that are separated by age group so that everyone from everywhere can participate and display their Gunpla entries online. The first round is done at a local store level hosted by Hobbytown stores, which then leads to the national finalists. For me, this is the United States. There are third, second, and first places. Bandai Namco will then send each national champion to face off at their headquarters in Tokyo for the official World Cup finalist round, in which the company will choose the Gunpla World Champion. Just knowing a company does this on an annual basis is just super cool. I love it. It's an awesome concept. It just shows the company really cares about their product. And that's when I knew I had to try this at least once. For my diorama base, I am going for rock formations and water. The rock is constructed out of layers of cork glued down by hobby glue with foam chips to give more rigid and pointed form. I then take some quick drying spackling compound, spraying it across the surfaces of the cork and foam to give it the lava rock formation look. Spackling is a really easy material to make rock surfaces or even ground, or mud for that matter. My inspiration for the diorama comes from the time when my parents took me and my sister to a place called Antofagasta, Chile. It is a town in the northern desert part of Chile where my mother was born, and my father served a church mission there for a short while. I remember we fished along the rocky shore with my family, and it was an unforgettable experience. I loved it. Anyways, all that I'm doing in this moment is covering every possible place where the rock is exposed. Every crevice and divot is covered with spackling to obtain a much more natural look. I then proceed to cover the whole base with darkened Mod Podge. This is to effectively give a protective layer on top of the wood and the small pockets and crevices that I may have missed with the spackling. Mod Podge is a really useful coat that protects foam and other plastics that can potentially react or melt from the rattle can spray. This reactive melting effect does not look good in some applications, but I wanted to prevent that from happening regardless. You will also notice that I covered the wood with Mod Podge as well. My thinking here was to let this plasticize slightly sink into the wood, which would bind the wood to help hold the resin on top for the final resin pour. Not sure if it really did make much of a difference in the end, but the final resin pour came out solid, so I guess I'm glad I did do this step. Afterwards, I take a brown primer and cover the entire diorama in this base primer. During the step of priming the diorama, I received feedback from a close friend who had suggested that my diorama looked like it was made from a jar of Nutella. After grabbing my readers and taking a closer look, I concluded that my friend's observations were not all that far out. But no, I did not use Nutella. I then set to work on painting the water. I'm working with a bright blue, a bright green, and an earth brown to set my water tones. I'm mainly working with the blue as my base tone and working in the earth brown to darken the water. I'm going pretty heavy with the water to paint ratio. This is mainly to capture the flowing effect that water naturally has. My goal was to make this water look dynamic and as full of life as possible. The green hues help capture the life and vegetation that exists in this portion of the sea. I've also found that bright green is a really good hue to brighten water rather than using yellows. Same as the earth brown to darken water depths. The painting techniques I'm using are dappling effects and some blending to capture flow and movement. In the end, I do 3 coats of paint, wet on wet coats specifically, for the color of the water. I'm using brighter colors close to the edges of the rocky shore, which then naturally leads to painting the rock. I'm pretty liberal with my rock colors in this project. You will notice that I'm not too afraid to mix in the green and the blue hues where the water and rock meet. I did this purposefully so that the color of the water reflects off of the rock to prevent clashing colors. I'm using a series of grays, dark blues, and sand for the hues of the rock. Water to paint ratio is more or less the same as I had used in the watercolors. I'm only applying black to help darken any major recesses or shadows of the rock. Then I also apply a straight black to the sides for the diorama edges. I then use Citadel's color contrast. It is called Mantis Warriors Green for the seaweed and ocean flora that are growing on the rock surfaces where the water surrounds it. I'm pretty liberal with applying this green contrast. I think I slightly thinned it down with some water, but not too much. This contrast is the perfect color for what I was looking for, and it applied very well to this piece. I then use AK's Rock Gray to do my highlights on the rock. And so far I've been loving AK. It's one of my favorite lines of paint right now. And all I'm doing is that I'm just dry brushing this rock gray onto the high surfaces where the sunlight is directly hitting the rock surface. I do also lightly dry brush onto the water surface where the shore becomes shallow. I found that's a really easy and solid effect to capture shallow water. I then proceed to airbrush the parts and kits. For this entry, I was inspired to follow the design of the Aztec God, Huitzilopochtli, who is the Aztec god of the sun and of war. According to their tradition, he wields a mirroring shield and a blazing serpent. What's more is that his anthropomorphic design is often represented by a hummingbird, which I thought was pretty cool and unique. For his design, I went with Blood Orphan's Asmodee for the main frame. Asmodee's feet, legs, body, arms, and head really fit the design I was eager to mimic for this entry. For the color choice, I stuck with blues, whites, reds, little accents of yellow and gold with black and green to help make this Gundam stand out from the rest of the diorama. I airbrushed the ankle bracing as a cautionary pattern. This more or less is meant to mimic the jaguar pattern of the sandals that the deity wears in Gundam style. Oh! Buns aside, I'm quite happy that I stuck with this approach. I used masking tape to accomplish this pattern. I then used liquid masking on the edges to give the bracing more of a weathered metal look. I had not used liquid masking before, so this was cool to try and learn on a small scale first. I was not perfect in my masking though, so a few tough lessons there to improve my masking skill. Slowly but surely, this kit was coming along, and I was pretty excited to see this through. I loved how the colors were starting to come together, and then the kit being assembled and taking shape. There's still plenty to do. I then started painting Asmodee's javelin. I thought this weapon was perfect for my kit's design. I base primed the blade white, as I am looking to make this weapon bright and blazing, as any Aztec burning serpent legendary god spear should be. Over the white, I then airbrush fluorescent yellow. The fluorescence hue helps the brilliance of the light stand out and reflect more brilliantly. It's a really nice effect, and I definitely use this technique more so now with my fire effects and hobbying. This technique really enhances the colors to be more vibrant like fire. Once the fluorescent coat is dry, I then start to layer in my yellows. My concept going forward with this weapon is to have both ends of the javelin be bright, with the middle being cherry red to imitate molten hot metal. In short bursts, I am darkening the javelin blade with a variety of oranges and reds. I only am using the AK paints for this molten blade effect. I'm being careful and controlling the airbrush so that I don't ruin the brightness of the yellow at the top and at the bottom of the javelin blade. With the airbrush, it proves quite efficient to paint the blade and blend the colors simultaneously. I'm just me looking at this footage again over and over. It's just awesome to watch the colors come together and just blend as if it's just the natural effect. It's just awesome to watch, and I love it. One thing I will note is that airbrushing takes practice. Always practice on plastic spoons, old kits, or models to learn how to control your airbrush before you ruin your really good kits. I definitely had to learn on my own, watching videos, reading articles. I am thinking of posting my own videos just to share my own experience and thoughts on that, so just watch out for that. This javelin is not done though, as we need some decals to help this javelin blade represent the burning serpent of Huitzilopochtli. So a little later in this video, I will circle back to the freehand decal I was able to accomplish on this blade. After a good majority of the airbrushing was complete, I then started to drill holes to wire sub-assemblies of the kit. I picked up some copper wire from a local hardware store. Copper is perfectly malleable with this thin wire gauge, and it's strong enough to hold up top-heavy structures without bending or shearing. And the wiring keeps the pose stable and static. This wiring step was crucial, as Gundam kits have a notorious reputation for being top-heavy and overburdened. I had never structurally wired any of my projects in the past, so this was new territory for me, to say the least. But from the videos I watched and some articles I read through, I was able to come up with some solutions. I started by drilling a hole at the waist leading up through the chest segment and test fitting the wire. This was accomplished basically by trial and error. I'm not going to sugarcoat that one. I had to be extremely careful so that I wouldn't drill excessively or too far where it would ruin the piece. Side note, I didn't take any footage of the wings being airbrushed, but I used the wings from the Real Grade Gundam Wing Zero kit that go nicely with my theme in mind. I airbrushed them with a mix of Vallejo space dust shifters to mimic the iridescent wings of a hummingbird, which I was quite happy with in the end. Here I am changing the camera angle to help identify what my wiring process was throughout this project. I knew the wiring had to be done at the critical joints to keep the entire kit structurally grounded. The leg in this sequence is the leg that is grounded on the diorama. So this Gundam's pose will look like he has one foot on the rock and the other leg is high in the air to show dynamicism in the piece. So the wire will be fed through a good portion of the length of the leg. I am also structurally wiring the hip to the leg so that there is more supported stability. I am placing glue in the drilled cavities and the wire itself for more adhesive connection as the assembly is starting to come together. I'm using Gorilla Super Glue to have the wire bond and with the plastic in efficient time. After the bonding dries, I use wire cutters to clip off any extra wire or extra lengths that are not needed. This was all accomplished through test fitting and dry trial before bonding the wire and plastic with glue. I also used my handy dandy Neil nose pliers to curve the wiring for best fitting. I used the same copper wire for the javelin's wired attachment, which I then magnetized to the javelin blade. The javelin wire was primed with a metal black for a nice metal look without spending too much time on it. Okay fam, I gotta come clean. I did not record any footage of the tetrapod build for this diorama. That one is my rookie mistake. I was locked in to meet the store entry deadline, and I decided to forego the video footage altogether for the tetrapod. But I can briefly explain that the paint scheme I had in mind was literally super bad. So that was my inspiration for the tetrapod paint scheme. I did not pour as much time on the tetrapod as I did for my Aztec Gundam, to be fair. It's all good though. The tetrapod build was comprised of elements from the high-grade Gundam Throne Eins kit and the high-grade Reborn's Gundam kit. Hey, it is what it is. We got there in the end. That's all that matters. And as everyone knows, what's better than one custom-built Gundam? Well, it's two custom-built Gundams fighting each other. We'd love to see it! Additionally, I did not capture any footage of the resin pour for the water, so technically it wasn't even a pour. It was more of like spreading clear resin around smoothly with a small spoon. But yeah, that resin turned out amazing. I used Vallejo's water effects and I was really impressed with it. At this point, I placed glue on the entire bottom of the foot along with the wire that will feed into the standing leg. After the standing leg is secured, I start to place on my surface water effects. All I'm doing in this scene is just dappling the water material with an old brush. I am consciously manipulating the material to look more realistic for a water surface. In my mind, these Gundams are ginormous, so I didn't feel the need to have the waves be high in this diorama. This was also my approach for the water resin to settle on a shallow level. It turned out quite nice, I think. Once the water surface dried, I applied some thin dry brush coats of white paint onto the high water surface ridges to show some foam that is forming at the top of these waves. It adds a nice touch to the water effect, helps pronounce the water's extreme edges in a natural way, and if I can just be completely honest in one moment, this water diorama, it's probably the one feature I got perfect by a factor of 50. I was just stunned how it turned out. I'm really quite proud of it, and it just the finished result just makes me happy. I love looking at it. It's just awesome, and it still kind of amazes me that I was able to accomplish this. For the energy mirroring shield, I sliced up a heated laminate sheet and lightly airbrushed white with a hint of light turquoise to give the energy some energized color. I don't know. I purposefully airbrushed the edges of the shield shape to keep the middle of the shield transparent. In my mind, I keep thinking of that one scene from the Armored Core 6 release trailer. Oh yeah, we loved Armored Core 6. I got an Armored Core project idea that I want to accomplish next year, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be great. Anyways, that energy shield scene served as my inspiration for the shield. I applied the same Vallejo water effects on both sides of the laminate to give that energy shield some shape. In retrospect, I'm not sure if I accomplished this look right. I do think the heated laminate sheet was a great idea. I think I might attempt this with other techniques and projects. We'll see. We'll keep it open for now. After the effects dried, I painted thin white lines running all across the surfaces and edges for that energy shield look. And then I glued it to the kit bashed shield component and then cleaned up some of the airbrush spots with my brush for finishing touches. Hey guys, it's Mudhead here. Just wanted to try a new camera angle and see how that kind of works out. So a little bit more trial and error. We love to see it. For this portion of the video, I just wanted to share my thoughts on the project overall, where it took me, some of the lessons I learned, and just share my experience from what I was able to learn. I was really surprised by the diorama itself, how the water turned out, which was just fabulous. That is one thing I'm very proud of in this entry. I learned so much about airbrush techniques that has been incredibly useful for all the projects that I was able to accomplish in the last year, and for the projects that moving forward, I will be utilizing the airbrush a lot more. It was just a good time to be able to use the airbrush so extensively, and I loved it. One thing I will want to improve a lot more on is the structure for wiring. That is just that was just new ground to me, and I definitely did not do as well as I could have for the wiring, and that is something I definitely need to improve on from this entry. It was awesome to meet the other artists, meet the other hobbyists that were at the story event for our entries for the Gunpla Builders World Cup 13. Just learning from their experiences, any tips and tricks that they had in the trade was just really fascinating to hear what they had to say from their experiences, being able to see what their entries accomplished. It was just awesome. Just to be able to see what other hobbyists and artists are able to accomplish is really rewarding, in my opinion. And so for the decal, I'm just going to briefly explain what I did. I always knew that it was going to be a blue serpent that I wanted to paint. And so I started off with the schematic. I simply drew it with a dark red, dark purple to draw the schematic and structure of the snake. And then in layers, I went from deep purples to dark blues, then to bright blues, then to the finishing touches and detail of the snake to help it pop out a little bit more. I always knew that for the decal work, I wanted to have the decals mirrored on both sides of the javelin blade. All I'm doing in this case for the decal, for the mirroring, is that I just basically eyeball it. I'm lucky enough that in this case, I am working with a thin and small profile to paint the decal onto the javelin blade. In the end, I was very happy with how this turned out. And that brings us an end to this video. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. It means so much to me. Just the views alone is really rewarding. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, leave a comment, and consider subscribing to the channel. I will be releasing more videos of the projects that I want to accomplish next year. There's plenty on the docket, and looking at the workbench, not this one, but the other workbench with all the projects I have in mind and what I have in storage. Oh man, there's a lot of good stuff that's coming around. So we're looking at Armored Core, we're looking at Confrontation, we're looking at Infinity, we're looking at more Gunpla. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff. So yeah, stick around if you want to see more of this content. I do appreciate it. It means a lot. Thank you so much for watching this video. We'll catch you around next time.